have to control yourself!
Welcome back, ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and The Substance has just become the rare horror movie to actually be nominated for Best Picture. That never happens, but this movie is one of the most original, weird, and innovative films that we have ever seen. It threw everything at us and the kitchen sink. So let's get into the madness of The Substance and Coralie Fargeat's takedown of modern beauty standards. The Substance is best described as a 2.5-hour scream at Hollywood and the insane pressure it puts on women. It's no coincidence that one of the earliest scenes in the film is Harvey saying,
"How the old has been able to stick around for this long. That's the mystery to me."
He's at least the same age as Elisabeth, if not older. So why would he attack her age if he's in the same boat? Because, as a man, Harvey's allowed to age and remain important and prominent. But Elisabeth, as a woman, can't do that. See, Fargeat is focusing on the erasure of older women, partially based on her own fears.
And the movie coincided with the moment where I had passed my 40s, I was getting toward my 50s, and I was starting to have those crazy, violent thoughts that, okay, my life is going to be over.
And think about it. No one's ever said that George Clooney was too old for a role. He's 62 and he literally just cameoed as Batman. In Hollywood, men get to age. They just become silver foxes and it doesn't affect their box office appeal. But there's no silver fox equivalent for women. There are amazing older actresses in Hollywood, but they're usually relegated to supporting roles under the guise of desirability. And that's part of the reason Fargeat cast Demi Moore. Moore was a sex symbol in the 90s and she quietly left the industry as she got older. But obviously, she is still absolutely stunning. She set the beauty standard when she was younger, and now in her 60s, she still completely fits the beauty standard. But she's not 20. In an interview with NPR, Fargeat said,
"You can look like Demi and still feel that you're not good enough, that this part of your body is not right, that, that this is not seen enough, or whatever."
In The Substance, Harvey is a stand-in for Hollywood. He is the externalization of all these social constructs. He even says so.
I have to give people what they want.
And through him, we see the consequences of these social constructs.
We need her young. Find me somebody new.
And let me be clear, these are made-up constructs, but society ensures that there are real repercussions. Sue and Elisabeth are genuinely treated differently. No amount of self-love would change that.
You are one, but they get a very different experience of the world because they don't have the same body.
But Elisabeth also internalizes these constructs, and we see that in one of the most important scenes in the movie. When she can't go on a date, it's not really because of how she looks. It's about these constructed ideals. Elisabeth looks great, but she doesn't look like she's 20. Just like Harvey, she thinks she doesn't look young enough. And if she can't reach that beauty standard, why leave the house? There are real-world issues because she's aging, such as getting fired from her show. But here, she self-imposes this isolation. She denies herself a date and possible connection because she doesn't meet the beauty standard. And if she doesn't meet the beauty standards, then she doesn't deserve love.
The external gaze kind of shape our own relationship to our body.
In fact, when she looked in the mirror, I was reminded of this Margaret Atwood quote. "You are a woman with a man inside watching a woman. You are your own voyeur." Elisabeth cannot see herself neutrally. She can only perceive herself in the context of what everybody else thinks. It's through Elisabeth's internalization of these constructs and rules that we actually get to the main message of Fargeat's film. Women cannot continue to contort and cannibalize themselves to fit into these idealized roles. Instead, they need to push all the social norms away. Literally. In an interview with Vogue, Fargeat herself said that the film is fundamentally about the violence of control. See, we've created a society in which women are treated better if they look a specific way. And this treatment is a form of control. At the very least, it encourages women to go after that beauty standard. And, at its most insidious, it affects how women simply exist in the public.
The fact that we as women have to constantly be aware of how our body is going to be seen, is going to be judged. You have to deal with all that constantly every minute, and obviously men don't.
Fargeat films Elisabeth and Sue very differently. Especially in the first half of the movie, Elisabeth's shots tend to be wide at very direct angles. We're seeing all of her, and in a way, she's almost part of the set design. She's literally fading into the background. And cool costume design moment here. The one thing that makes her pop is this bright yellow jacket. Even in this scene, when she's supposed to be incognito, she's still wearing it because subconsciously, she is trying to attract attention and stay relevant. While Elisabeth fades into the background, Sue pops. But notice the camera camera angles here. They're all very sexual. There's even a lot of butt shots. Fargeat said, "The ass is a very strong symbol of how our body is not neutral in the public space. Her shot choice conveys how the world sees Sue. She can't even walk down the street without being sexualized." In both cases, the women's bodies are for visual consumption. Sue is noticed and given special treatment, but the price is that she is constantly sexualized. In an interview with Hammer and Nail, Fargeat stated that Sue represents another kind of violence where hypersexualization is something that devours you. The gaze can chop us into body parts. Sue's value is entirely dependent on her sexual appeal, but Elisabeth is too old to be sexualized, so she is rendered invisible. But what does that have to do with control? Well, these beauty standards control women's relevance. Like I said, Elisabeth is basically invisible because she's over 50. That's why she tries so hard to become beautiful again. So the control primarily appears in the ways that women harm themselves to fit this ideal.
The movie is all about women bodies, how we can end to kind of tyrannize our bodies to kind of fit some, expectations outside expectations.
One of the ways the substance highlights this control is through dieting. And before I get into this, let me make this clear. Anyone of any gender can struggle with eating disorders, but eating disorders are much more prevalent in women, and there is much more societal pressure for women to be thin. Now, it's no coincidence that Elisabeth and Sue are both fitness show hosts. Their livelihoods, their product, is literally based around their body and physical appearance. Even more than typical actresses, their bodies are for public consumption.
To always kind of have this overexposed body to want to kind of shape and reshape and reshape and reshape.
And with their bodies, of course, comes food. Throughout this film, food is presented as disgusting. Dare I say, the food shots are some of the most horrific parts of the entire movie.
People just love that. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Pre-substance Elisabeth rarely eats, and we never see Sue eat at all. The only thing in her fridge is Diet Coke. For them, perfection involves starving themselves. And don't forget, they are selling their bodies back to the public. They are promoting a look that is based on malnutrition. Throughout the film, food is a symbol of overindulgence and lack of control, made clear by Elisabeth's post-substance relationship with cooking. And it all starts with the cookbook.
Yeah, why does Harvey give her a cookbook when she doesn't even eat?
Well, it's messed up on so many levels. For one, he's kind of saying, you've had your 15 minutes. You're old now. Go back to the kitchen where you belong. It's incredibly ageist and sexist all at once. And it gets even worse when we consider the type of cookbook. French cuisine is known for being fattening and indulging. So with this book, he's also saying that she can let herself go now. She no longer has to diet, not because her eating patterns are destructive, but because she just isn't relevant anymore. And let's not forget, dieting for a specific look is inherently about control. And this type of dieting, you are literally trying to shape your body by controlling what you eat. That's why when Sue wakes up rotisserie chicken scraps, she screams,
Control yourself!
Obviously, the entire mess is gross, but that's not what Sue is upset about. It's about Elisabeth's overindulgence. And remember, they're actually one. So when she's mad at Elisabeth, she's actually mad at herself.
Oh, is that why she's got that weird chicken wing nightmare?
Exactly. Sue feels guilty about how much she ate, and it manifests in the nightmare. The irony is that, by losing control, Elisabeth is actually regaining her autonomy. Remember that really gross scene with Harvey and the shrimp heads? He felt totally comfortable just scarfing down all of that food and leaving remnants. And now she's allowing herself to eat the same way. I'm not saying it's good, but it's freeing. You know what else is super controlling and rigid in this movie? The substance itself. The substance has strict rules.
1 week for one, and 1 week for the other.
And any deviation from those rules ends in disaster. And the substance can read as a metaphor for so many drugs and beauty injections. Ozempic, Botox, filler, Sculptra, we could go on. But as a society, we praise all of that up to a point. We love when celebrities remain forever youthful using Botox until they use too much and then look uncanny. So we love filler until it starts aging and migrating around the face. With all of these beauty injections, there's an unspoken rule. Don't go too far or you'll end up uglier than before. And Elisabeth is the perfect example of that. She took the substance to gain a better version of herself. But then Sue didn't follow the rules and they both suffered from it. Now, let's go back to Fargeat's quote. All of these attempts at control are super violent. Sue starving herself is an inherently violent and harmful act. And when Elisabeth binges, she does it violently. She is literally throwing food and appliances all over the room. The substance itself might be the single most violent thing in this movie. Sue's birth scene will genuinely haunt me forever. Even extracting the stabilizer is painful and gross. And this is all a metaphor for the violence that some women enact on themselves.
The violence that we can really do to our bodies, you know, like when you read all the things that women can do to extend their leg, to, you know, redo their boobs, to do crazy diets. I did myself.
The final fight between Elisabeth and Sue is literally Elisabeth warring with her own mind. One part of her wants to accept aging and forget about the beauty standards. She wants to live freely no matter how she looks. But another part of her is still indoctrinated. She still believes beauty is the single most important thing.
The only lovable part of me. You have to come back.
And what's tragic is that this allegiance to the beauty standard is what kills her. Both sides of her believe that she deserves to die, not for any real moral failing, but because she's old. Even if Elisabeth didn't want to technically physically die, when she says,
I need you. Because I hate myself.
she's essentially agreeing to die in the public space. She was agreeing to self-imposed isolation. Any personal fulfillment or connection is foregone so she can watch the younger, better version of herself on TV. And Sue just hates Elisabeth. Even though they are one and she literally would not exist without Elisabeth, she despises her.
She wastes 7 days stuffing her face in front of the TV.
And she hates her because she doesn't live life the way that Sue thinks she should. If she was just old, Sue would pity her. Her disdain comes from the fact that Elisabeth isn't trying to meet the beauty standard. She's okay to rot and be gross and sit at home. Because she isn't living according to Sue's standards, she views Elisabeth as stealing time from her. And that is why she kills her. And that brings us to this insane final act. So, without the stabilizer, Sue starts to literally fall apart. Because remember, they are one. Sue can't kill Elisabeth without killing herself. And then we get this great scene.
Pretty girls should always smile.
This is more than just a tension-building moment. It shows just how much Harvey and the board think of Sue as just meat. They don't want to know about her. They don't want to hear her opinions. They don't want her to open her mouth. All they want is to use her body for views. Now, when she takes a second dose of the substance, she says,
I just need a better version of myself.
but then, look at this. This scene shows just how far Elisabeth comes. Earlier in the movie, she couldn't even go on a date because she didn't meet the beauty standard. She didn't look like the younger, hotter version of herself. But now those two versions have merged. Quite literally. She understands that Elisabeth and Sue are one and they both deserve love.
And she finally loves herself. She finally look at herself in the mirror and it's the first time where she say, okay, yes, I'm not going to stay home. I deserve to put my earrings, do my makeup, go outside, go on stage, take my place in the world and, you know, and have my moment.
She crashed out trying to go on a date, and now, as a literal monster, she still gets ready and thinks she deserves to be on stage. She is living for herself now. Her newfound confidence is also highlighted by the backup dancers on stage. They're all in as little clothing as possible with perfect bodies. Now, ironically, they have the types of bodies both Elisabeth and Sue sold to young women. Monstro Alyssa Sue is surrounded by her own creations, and yet she rejects them. And this perfectly exemplifies Elisabeth's role in society. She's a victim to beauty standards and unrealistic expectations, but she also perpetrated and profited off those same expectations. She sold women's insecurities right back to them to keep her corporate overlords happy and to keep herself in the spotlight. She helped to create her own downfall. So when she walks on stage, she is rejecting the beauty standard, but she's also rejecting the part that she played in maintaining that standard. She is accepting herself and saying that all the other women on stage should be doing the same.
She finally saw herself for who she is and managed to love herself and have some tenderness that she was never able to have.
When the audience sees Monstro Alyssa Sue, we get a modern reenactment of the monster hunt scenes from the Universal Monster films. In certain Universal Monster films, like The Wolfman and Frankenstein, the monsters are really tragic. They haven't done much wrong. Oftentimes, they never intentionally killed people. They're simply cursed by life. And the townsfolk are unsympathetic to them because, well, they're ugly and scary.
Bummer.
And funnily enough, the reason these monsters are killed is because of the Hays Code of the 30s. The Hays Code was basically a censorship code, and it stated that all villains had to be killed at the end of the film. It didn't matter if they were tragic or sympathetic or just plain unlucky. They had to die. And so today, some of these monster movies genuinely feel like tragedies. So the Hays Code is interesting because it blatantly sorts everyone into little categories. And of course, in monster films, the villain is going to be the ugliest creature. And the audience in The Substance does the same thing. They don't know about Sue's crime against Elisabeth. They just know that she is ugly, and for that, she must die.
Shoot the monster!
Okay, I get all that, but why'd she explode?
Fair question. So obviously this scene is batshit insane. But why? Well, first of all, Fargeat focuses a lot on sensory experiences in her work. She's not a dialogue-heavy writer. Her stories are told through shot design and wordless scenes.
Because I know that I'm not going to express myself with dialogues. I have the images that are going to express the main ideas and the main intention.
So this explosion gets to the heart of Fargeat's opinions on beauty standards. Blow them all up. And there's something so powerful about Monstro Alyssa Sue exploding on this audience of shareholders, producers, and directors that profited off of both Elisabeth and Sue. It's a metaphorical way of saying, you. This is what you created. You can't force it off stage or into the background. You all have to deal with it. This final scene also has some great homages to other horror movies. Being trapped in an auditorium filled with blood is a clear homage to the great feminist horror flick Carrie. The lighting and score are very reminiscent of Suspiria by Argento. And of course, this last scene of her walking through a Kubrick-style hall is a reference to The Shining. Now, as her body fully disintegrates, she crawls to her old Hollywood star. But when she looks up at the sky, she sees something you'll never actually see in Los Angeles: stars. She spent her whole life chasing stardom, but she never looked up at what the world already had to offer her. And she's only capable of seeing the rest of the world when she's freed from the confines of her body. She's no longer constantly thinking about her appearance. In an interview with Entertainment Weekly, Demi Moore said, "It becomes the ultimate sense of the soul's freedom because she's finally free of the prison of her body, and she's back to the purity in the sense of who she really is." In the final shot, we see Elisabeth Sparkle more clearly than ever. She isn't a body, she's just her. And that is the ending of The Substance. So what did you guys think? Was there too much gore? Do you want to know more? Big shout out to the writer of this video, Brianna McLarty. You can find her socials down in the comments below. Let us know what you thought down in the comments. You can at me on Twitter, Blue Skies, or Threads. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.